Well, the war of words heating up as we approach the New York primary. Hillary Clinton attacking Bernie Sanders, questioning whether the independent who's running as a Democrat really is a Democrat. Sanders fires back with some harsh words of his own. Listen.
I don't think that you are qualified if you get $15 million from Wall Street through your super PAC. I don't think you are qualified if you have voted for the disastrous war in Iraq. I don't think you are qualified if you have supported virtually every disastrous trade agreement which has cost us millions of decent-paying jobs. I don't think you are qualified if you supported the Panama Free Trade Agreement.
For more on this, let's bring in Jessica Tarlov, a Democratic pollster and strategist and senior political strategist at Show & Consulting, and Gianno Caldwell, Republican strategist. And Jessica, we're going to start with you because it's your party. What's going on here when you've got the #2 candidate suggesting that the #1 candidate, who is far ahead in the delegate count, is unqualified to be president?
Well, she actually started it earlier in the day. She dodged 3 questions about whether she thought that Bernie Sanders was qualified. And the point of her doing that was to bring up this disastrous New York Daily News interview that Bernie Sanders gave over the weekend, where he didn't seem clear on how he would actually break up the banks, which is his signature issue. But what's going on is New York, this primary is a really big deal. And it's not a big deal necessarily in terms of the delegates. I mean, if anything, it's going to be a close race. I still think she's going to come out on top. But it's a momentum issue, and she really needs this. She needs to say, I won my home state, and I win with diverse populations. Bernie Sanders, he's on a roll, but he's on a roll with, largely white constituencies. And we're going into a series of states that really favor her, and it's going to get tougher. The next 2 weeks, it won't look like the Republicans, but it's not going to be pretty.
Well, he was born in New York, still talks like he lives in New York, not necessarily Vermont. Could he win it?
I think it's possible, and I agree with actually Jessica's assessment on this. I think in this particular point in time, for Hillary Clinton especially, she is being outraised by Bernie Sanders. He is in close margins with her in terms of possibly winning New York. I think what he's doing is showing that he's unafraid to hit back at the Clinton machine. And for me, I think he's exposing her for what she really is, and that's a liar and a panderer. The fact that she said things that honestly speaking.
So we don't agree, actually.
No, we agree with your assessment.
We have like a quarter agreement.
But moving on, though, Hillary Clinton has been a person that will embrace a movement that's popular with the Democratic base. For example, calling herself a progressive. Well, you can't call yourself a progressive when you have a Goldman Sachs in your bed. So that's a problem.
In her bed.
In her bed. Speeches, paid speeches, big banks.
I know about the speeches. Believe me, I'm familiar with them. But the progressive argument, I think that she handled that quite well to say, what's the main component of progressive? It's about progress, and Hillary Clinton's career has shown that she's brought about a large amount of progress for America. Also, we could go back to when she stands up in Beijing as First Lady and says that, women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. I didn't see Bernie Sanders doing something like that. And if you're going to say, I marched with Martin Luther King and all this stuff, listen, Bernie Sanders is a great guy. I have no problems with him. I just don't think he should be president of the United States of America.
And we agree on that point.
Well, Hillary Clinton obviously doesn't either, because some of her remarks about him border on scornful. Here's what she had to say on Morning Joe.
Well, I think he hadn't done his homework, and he'd been talking for more than a year about doing things that he obviously hadn't really studied or understood, and that does raise a lot of questions. And really what it goes to is for voters to ask themselves, can he deliver what he's talking about? Can he really help people?
That was after Bernie Sanders had an interview with the editorial board of the New York Daily News. Couldn't describe, for instance, how he would break up the banks. Is that an effective counterattack from the former First Lady and Secretary of State?
I think it's hugely effective. And I think that, we talk about how Bernie Sanders has kind of treated her with kid gloves throughout, not really talked about the email scandal. We remember it famously in the first debate. I don't care about your email, which was, looking back, probably a mistake for him. That New York Times article over the weekend where his campaign was kind of lamenting what could have been. I think that this is very smart. And, Hillary Clinton wins every exit poll of voters who want someone with the right experience. And that's what they feel about Hillary Clinton. He wins honesty and trustworthiness. And I think that she needs to continue to strike him about how effective she can be as president and her qualifications.
You know, in Heather's last segment, A.B. Stoddard said, were it not for Donald Trump in the race, Hillary's emails would be a huge, front page issue virtually every day.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. And I think to some extent it has been. And I think that's some of the things that Bernie Sanders kind of highlighted. Not necessarily about the emails, but experience versus judgment. She didn't have the judgment not to send out the emails on this private server, which, who knows, it might have been secure with Norton antivirus for all we know. We have no idea.
I think we know that.
I hope that's the case, but we don't know. We don't know. So at the end of the day, when it comes to this election race, I think, especially if it's a general election race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, he's going to highlight and expose a number of these issues in which she has problems with. And I think that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day.
All right. Gianno Caldwell, Jessica Tarlov.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.